Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this newest and freshest show brought to you by Inspirate, called Inspirate Business. We're here to empower you, to enlighten you, and to inspire you to be able to live a better life, to live a life where we can make an impact in our communities. This particular show is focused on business, and we're going to be running a number of influencers that will be sitting in studio with me and sharing their insights, their journey in how they were evolved in the business world. I have a very good friend, Junaid Limalia. Junaid, I recall meeting you for the first time. I think it was 2000. You were out in a place called Harlesden in London. You recall that?
Yes.
And I think you walked in after a day's work, and the typical accountant, I remember, I'll never forget this. You walk in there and you have your envelopes and you handling all the financial happenings of the guys that were living there. It was a working holiday, I think you guys were on. So you come from an accounting background.
Yes.
That's what you studied for as well.
Yes.
Maybe tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Assalamu alaikum to the audience. I'm a chartered accountant. That's my background. I was born in Durban. Basically, mother, father, four brothers, or one of four brothers. I think, naturally, when you go to school, you don't really know what you want to do. You get to a point where, I was in matric, and the one thing that was my motivator is poverty. We came from a tough background. My parents.
You grew up in Durban.
Yeah, we grew up in Durban. I mean, we had a good, comfortable life. But but at the end of the day, you want more materialistically. You always feel like you aspire to something, and whatever, you need a motivator. So for me, I wanted more. I don't know why I wanted more, but I knew I wanted more. So for me, that was my motivator to get to university. Naturally, coming from a background I had 4 jobs to be in varsity.
Wow.
So it was basically working, studying, and it's not a sad story. I actually enjoyed it because I got to meet a lot of people. I developed a lot of relationships with a lot of people through that process. But I still remember, I was always busy, always doing a lot of stuff, working, studying. Everyone used to love the weekends. I used to not like the weekends because weekends was my work. Monday was like, I can relax, but everybody is not looking forward to Monday because they're off the weekend. But through that, I managed to get myself to university. I got to do my articles. I got an opportunity to do my articles with PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I did my articles with them, spent 3 years. And then come 26, 27, you're at this age where I don't know why. I felt like I was comfortable in Durban. I had a good system there. But you also feel like you're a small fish in a small bowl. And I felt for some reason I needed something different. So this is when the working holiday came to mind. So I still remember, a lot of people, when you go, people say, take someone's numbers, take someone's number. So you got a contact there, And I promised myself, no, I didn't want that. I just wanted a clean break. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I still remember getting to Heathrow Airport. And I got there and I'm sitting down and I start panicking. And then I think to myself, I'm like thousands of miles from anyone I know. If I fall down here, people are going to walk over me. And I'm sitting and you get this fear that you actually don't know anybody here and you're alone, And people don't realize this, but sometimes it actually takes time to get to know yourself. Because when you're in an ecosystem, you're so busy and everyone's got expectations of you, and you are the person that they expect you to be. But when you go to a different place and it's just you, you kind of learn things about yourself which you don't really, And what I learned about myself is actually, this was going to be a new journey for me. And I still remember, you saw me at that flat, I remember a guy telling me at varsity, he says, if you ever land up in London, I'm there, come to Hotel Olympia. So I go to, it was about a week into it, I go to Hotel Olympia just to, and I was living in the hostel at that time. So I go to Hotel Olympia and I meet I'm looking for this guy. His name was Altaf Qazi, the Durban guy, not the Altaf we know, but someone else. So I go there and he tells me, I asked the guy at reception, he says, no, there's no Altaf Qazi here, but there is a Salim Kaji and there's a Ismail Butta, from Azadva. So I said, okay, let me go and meet them. So I meet these two who close friends now. So I meet them and then we become buddies, and I still remember at that point in time, I was in the hostel, but also met this Moroccan guy who was in the hostel with me. Now, we had an interesting relationship because we lived together for a month. We took a place together, but we never saw each other because this guy was a restaurateur. So he used to start work he used to go to work around 2 o'clock in the afternoon and he used to come back at 12 in the night. I used to wake up in the morning and I used to get to work around 9. When I came back, he was not there. And when he came in, I was sleeping and I left before he, So we lived together for a month, but I must have seen him once, So it was quite an interesting experience. And then, we had a deal. The deal was that if you find a place or I find a place, we off our own ways. So he managed to get a friend of his and he found a place. At the same time, Salim was going to Canada and Ismail was with me. So Ismail and I decided, let's get a place together. So we basically got a place together. And then we were walking in Regent's Park. And then we see these two guys, Arshad Mullah and Musa Jassat, So we meet Musa Jassat and Arshad, and they said, no, they're looking to start up a house. So we said, okay, I wasn't sure, I didn't know anyone, but I think Ismail said, listen, it would be a lot more financially viable for him. I think when you go there, London is expensive. I was an accountant, so I was kind of earning a little more, but I think for Ismail, it was a lot more feasible. So we decided to move into a flat, which was in Harlesden, and we chose it because it was the highest crime rate in London. So it resonated with us as South Africans. We needed to be in that place. But and that's the journey of Harlesden. And then today, what was interesting about Harlesden is we met a lot of people because every one of us that lived in that flat, we came to a place, and invariably how it worked in London, you came there and you spent 2 weeks on someone's couch, but at the end of 2 weeks, you had to go. So we had a rule. We turned nobody away. So anyone came, you had your 2 weeks on the couch. So invariably, we'd have probably 6 of us that were residents, and we'd have 2 squatters that would come in. We'd come in, we eat your food, but you get your 2 weeks and then you move on. So it became like the stopover, and then there were also lots of people. If anyone came to London, we have lots of people coming in to stay with us.
So it was what's important is this thing of you saying that you left, and I think this is for our viewers, right?
Yes.
And youngsters watching as well, is that you wanted to explore.
Yes.
So you could have stayed in your environment in Durban as an accountant. You probably would have stayed with PwC.
Yeah.
And just the fact of going into the unknown.
Yes.
I mean, I can just imagine the life skills that you attained in that period. That has helped you. I mean, we're going to go on. It's got a very interesting journey as to and where you are right now. But what I'm saying is that in terms of your work that you're doing right now, I guess that rearing that you attained, going into that unknown foreign country, the weather conditions different from here, people, strangers that you develop a bond with, that you still have this friendship with.
Yes.
But those life skills is what's key, right, to your success.
No, I think sometimes you never really know why you need to do something, but your instinct is telling you need to do it. And I think right through, one needs to trust one's instinct. You trust that instinct because, we truly believe that, if you have faith, that we all do, we have faith, we believe that our Almighty is going to guide us. And He guides us in different ways. So if you have a yearning to do something, I've learned never always trust the yearning. You don't always have to, it's not always what you want, it's something that you need to do. You don't know why you need to do it.
But let me ask you all that, and then before we go to the break, we got a few minutes.
Yeah.
That instinct, I mean, I think a lot of people have, it's easy to say, the people say, I had a gut feel.
Yes.
The gut instinct.
Yes.
And we're so much in our minds. Right? I mean, just the influx of information and whatever. Just quickly, before we go to the break, How do you tune into that instinct? And we can follow it up, after the break. But just touch a little bit on that. How do you follow that instinct? How do you know the difference if it's your instinct or is it your doubts, maybe speaking?
You are correct. All I knew, and I can't, maybe I can't rationalize this properly. And forgive me if I'm not doing it well. But I knew that, I had a good thing going in Durban, and I knew what was going to happen. You're probably going to qualify, and then your mom's going to say, listen, it's probably time for you now to take a wife. And then you get into the system where you get married. And I'm not saying those are not important things. They're important things, But there's also a part where you need to develop yourself. I mean, I was grown up in a house where I had my mom doing everything for me. I didn't have to ever...
The typical Indian boy syndrome.
The typical Indian boy thing. You know what I'm trying to say? And then you knew you'd get into it, and the next system would be, the next era would be, you'd have a wife doing it for you. And all of that is fine. But I knew I needed this for myself. I needed to see whether I could make it on my own. Now, and the best way to do that for myself was to get to a place where no one could be there to help me.
Yes.
Okay. And London was that for me. So I had to cook my own
independence.
Food. That independence, and it, I still remember this aunt. She told me, she gave me this musalla as my, my going a gift. But she told me 100 days. 100 days. You got to stick this out 100 days. Now, this is an old lady that lived. She wasn't by no means someone that I would say was like, I would normally take advice from, and she was always a lovely auntie, But she gave me this advice, and I still remember. And you go through that phase where 30 days, 60, you get lonely because you yearn for your family, you yearn for what you used to. So when you go there, you feel, no, this is something that you need to stick out. So I remember the 100 days, and through this, you meet people. And this is where my view, the Almighty brings these elements to you that helps you through your journey, So for me, London was about me, not, and I say this with the greatest of respect. You have relationships. You have to be a son to your parents. You have to be a brother to
Okay. So how powerful is that? You talked about Junaid's journey, going into the uncertain, the unknown.
Yeah.
And then connecting with people. Allah puts people in your life that helps you in your journey. That today you have those relationships with.
Yes.
Then a lady that tells you about that discipline for that 100 days. Those are lessons for so many of us as we traverse our own respective journeys. We'll continue this after the break. Welcome back to Inspirate Business. We're sitting in this beautiful set brought to us by Aza Collective. And we have a very special guest, Junaid Limalia, on this hot couch, this Gabba couch from Aza Collective out in Kramerville. And you look so regal, right, sitting on this couch. We spoke a little bit in the first segment about our journey. I think it's now over, 20 years, our relationship. You just turned 50 last year.
Yes.
Is that so?
Yes,
this year, actually.
Yeah.
Earlier this year.
Sure.
So that's quite a milestone as well. So you were talking about London. You went into the unknown.
Yes.
And then interestingly, it's there where you met your wife
No. So my wife was from Durban. She was studying her LLB, so I decided to go for a year.
All right.
And then I came back to Durban. We got married, and then we decided to spend a year alone
in London.
London.
Yeah. Oh yes. You came back and then you went back.
Yeah. So we got back. Yeah. So we did like a bit of a backpacking honeymoon.
Right.
We got robbed in France. We were on the streets for a couple of days. but we managed to pull through and get back to the UK. So that was interesting.
Again, life skills, right?
It's funny because when you get married to someone, it's different from when you courting somebody. It's the honeymoon's over. You have to live with that person. And I thought we were going to strangle each other in that first month. But I think even then, you have an incident that brings you closer. And it keeps you closer, and we managed to get through that. And then it's been
3 beautiful kids.
Alhamdulillah.
So fast forward, you then I just want to get into this. You then have a very interesting journey. I think it's about a 14-year journey.
Yes.
At SARS, the
Yeah.
South African Revenue Service. Now, I know when you say SARS, everybody starts shaking, right? So this is the man that knew everybody's tax issues, right? All the businessmen out there, we know how we have to deal with SARS.
Yeah.
But interesting, you were at a time when SARS had created, from what I understand, this business unit that then won awards internationally.
100%.
Right? So tell us about that journey. How did you get in there? And,
So I came back to South Africa. I was in Durban for 3 months. I was looking for a job. The only job offer I got was from SAB.
All right, okay.
so I thought, okay, clearly that's not going to work.
Yes.
Went to Johannesburg, did an interview, joined IBM for 2 years. The problem if you're in IBM, it's a multinational. So unless you're in America or Europe, you're not doing much.
Yes.
Left there, decided I wanted to specialize in tax, and I felt, well, which better training ground to do it than SARS. Started off as an auditor, I still remember 2002, senior auditor 2004, team leader 2005. So I progressed quite well.
This was at the time when current Minister Pravin Gordhan was commissioner.
Pravin Gordhan was minister. He had this idea, and large. So if you take the large business taxes, people don't realize this, and I left. So I'm talking 5 years back now. The contribution of large businesses to the country was 35% in terms of income tax, VAT, and pay-as-you-earn. If you add customs and excise, you're probably looking at 50% of the country's revenue coming from large businesses. At that point in time, we weren't talking lots of companies. You could isolate to 200 companies in your country that will probably give you, if I say 20% of the country's money. That's how much it is. So you got to appreciate if one of those taxpayers stop paying.
Are these like JSE listed companies?
These are JSE listed companies, multinationals. Yeah. They're naturally corporate. So I was at the large business. It was the corporate tax center, and then the corporate tax center was very much. Praveen had this idea, about getting ex-CAs. Older CAs who retired, because you need to get these guys with certain skills to be able to unpack. Because the corporate taxes were a lot more complex than the normal taxes. So I got in at that point in time where that was starting up. It was very much an audit environment.
So this was 2002, 2003, 2004. Yeah.
Then what happened in 2004? We started improving. We said we want a bigger value proposition. So we want to put everything under one roof where you're not just being audited, but we provide you with service and all of that as well. So that carried on where I was the senior auditor there. But at that point in time, I naturally was there for a short while where there's a good system in place. And then come 2009, it was working well, but they felt that there were certain bottlenecks and challenges. So they took me out of business for a year. And they asked me, why don't you work with McKinsey consultants and come up with a new model? So I sat and I benchmarked with the McKinsey, with probably about 5 tax administrations around the world in terms of, what's the different things they do? So we came up with a operating model, which in 2009, the McKinsey consultants, they give you the formula and they leave. I had to then implement that model as part of the new operating model. That was in 2010. At the end of 2010, remember, I've been out of business now for 2 years, so I wasn't sure, where I was going to fit into the organization. But, I applied for a role as an executive, and I didn't apply for the role I wanted. I applied for a role in the relationship management space because I thought that would be a better way to proactively get to know clients so that I don't know if people consider SARS to be clients, but we considered them to be clients at that time.
A key stakeholder.
Stakeholder, let's put it that way. And then you get to know their business and you get to understand. And unfortunately, no one likes it, but you have to pay your taxes because otherwise the country won't operate. And then I was appointed to the executive of audit, which is not what I wanted because it's a lot more adversarial compared to the relationship space. And that was, where I landed up. And it was very good skills in the sense that as much as, I had teams who had about 250 people around the country in 3 offices. Every audit of a corporate was, on my head. So we had naturally cases that we had to manage, and you got to appreciate corporates need to manage their business. Tax, like any expense, is an expense. You want to manage it. And naturally, people will use the law to the best of their ability to structure their affairs, which is legal, by the way. But, there is a concept of tax avoidance and tax evasion. So tax evasion is when you cheat in the taxes. Tax avoidance is when you...
It's being smart.
It's being smart. But sometimes, there's a very fine line, and that line can get gray. And my job was to, if we can see something is not, the fisc is losing money, how do we attack it? Using whatever instruments are available in the law. Now, so tax was a commodity for us to make money for the fisc because the money needed to be used to run the country. So for me, I think that part it was not what I set out to do. I wanted to become a tax expert because I felt, well, tax, I can take that elsewhere. No one hires you because you're the manager at SARS,
But you developed a unit that became such a...
So it was, in 6 years, every year we contributed, we made good targets, for the fiscus, and that helped. And I also think, the country was in a good trajectory. I think
this was now you're talking...
Thabo Mbeki's time, Minister Godan, and it was before the Zuma era, which came in, and I think we had done quite well. Naturally, we got to a point where, the Zuma era came involved and we had a change of guard at SARS. I felt two things. I felt like it was not resonating with my value system, what I felt was happening. And, so I felt I needed to move. Okay, because I knew...
This might have been around, what, 2010, 2011? So
2016 is when this happened. So I had done, reasonably well up to that point in time, and we had, they did tell me, go and collect revenue. That was your job. And
that's very interesting because, just on a side issue, which I think maybe our viewers can understand, I think they asked one of the ministers, I think it was Gwede, I think they asked Minister Gwede Mantashe about, they talked of the lost decade in that 10 years.
Yes.
And a lot of guys say, because it's interesting, the timelines.
Yes.
They say that first 4 years or 5 years of the Zuma era wasn't actually that bad.
It wasn't bad.
It was actually good. It was in that last 5 years, from 2015 onwards, right? Is that where we really, really hit a knock?
I
so
think
what I find interesting is that you had a world-class revenue generation unit.
Yes.
We were winning awards internationally. I read somewhere, even Eskom was winning awards in 2001.
Yes.
And obviously you see where we are right now. But how did it go wrong? What exactly happened?
So unfortunately, the change of guard, when you had Praveen Gordhan was the commissioner and then he became the minister, naturally, that was his space. So he had, let's call it a reasonable alignment in terms of the thinking of the SARS and naturally when Tom Moyane came in, it was a different philosophy, and it was at that point in time where, you had state capture being, all these SOEs were, let's call it, under attack. And naturally, the findings have come out in terms of what happened in that era. So I think we did lose. We lost a lot of, I think there was like 100, there were stats like about 100 senior managers, that left, and once you lose intellectual capital, for people with 15, 20 years, and tax is not something that unless you do it, you need time in the game for you to build that expertise. You can't hire someone with a degree and think they're going to suddenly hit the ground running. Unfortunately, you need experience as well. So they lost good skills. They lost experience with that process. And I think they've done reasonably well. But I do think that, and I say this, I'm not saying that because I was there. I'm saying because I think it's common that they were on the top of the game. I remember one of Barry Hall was the chief technology officer. His second shared a stage with Hillary Clinton, and SARS was being awarded the fastest technologically advanced, because in terms of how long it takes to technologically drive, transformation in an organization, SARS was considered to be the best in the world at that time in terms of the pace that they transformed, and with e-filing and what it was doing. So it was, let's call it there. And unfortunately, as I said, that's when we hit the brakes.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit after the break. We can move so fast with these. It's intriguing conversation. And here we get in firsthand some of the experiences.
Yeah.
Here we had a world-class entity that was then broken. We're trying to fix it, and I'd like to talk about that, in the next segment. But what's very important is that, you mentioned, and I think that's the theme, and something prevalent for the country as well, is that when you were recruited, it was the intention to bring some of the best young financial minds at SARS.
Yes.
It's when all that was drained out because of a cultural misfit. You said your ethos didn't allow you, your ethics didn't allow you to stay. And then you leave, And this is where you create then the whole. And then we see the problems that we do. And this is for any organization. It's about having the best competencies, no matter what. And when you have that, you actually then can strive to be really successful. At least you have the right foundation for a successful business. We'll go a little bit further in the next segment. I'd like you to share some of your insights to the viewers, some of your experiences in your journey.
Yes.
I know you, the third chapter in this journey of yours is where you then end up in being involved in a listed property company.
Yes.
We'll talk about that after the break. Welcome back to Inspirate Business, this very newest and freshest introduction in conjunction with Hilaal TV. We have our sponsor, Aza Collective, on this beautiful couch, and we have this beautiful man here on this couch as well, Junaid Limalia, my good friend as well. And he's been intriguing us with his journey, having started as a young boy in Durban as an accountant, decided to venture out. He said he wanted to not be the small fish in the small pond, and took advantage of the working visas at the time, ended up in the unknown world of the UK, and ended up with met his wife and got married, and he had an issue in Europe as well where you got robbed. You thought only happens in South Africa. It happens in Paris as well. So we can't be so hard on ourselves. But then gets involved in SARS, which ends up winning awards internationally, develops this cutting-edge unit, collecting the much-needed revenue of our country, and doing a great job. Obviously, you've had the issues politically with change of guard, and that impacted you, you said, and it didn't match with your ethics. You then venture out of SARS, right?
Yeah.
Now again, uncertain again, right? Now moving into something totally new.
Sure. So you've been doing something for 15 years.
Right.
Okay. So and now you realize it's not working for you, and you're not happy. So you got two choices. You can stick there, and it is government. You're probably going to have a safe paycheck every month, and you can live, But if you do that, you're going to be miserable. Okay. So I needed to get out.
And so many people, that's a powerful lesson for so many people, because sometimes what we do is we want to hold on to that comfortability, but yet you're frustrated and yet you're unhappy. Yes. So, you have to have that leap of faith.
So for me, and I must admit, it was a leap of faith, because I joined a property fund. And to be honest, I think I knew the CFO. He was a friend of mine, and we had kept in touch. But, one part about business is you also need to trust people. So as much as you understand that someone may not always have the skills that you might take, and I clearly don't have any property experience. I was a chartered accountant, but I think more than anything else, they felt they could trust me in a sense. And I joined as the CFO for a small subsidiary of a property fund. Now,
I just want to, there's some pearls of wisdom. I know I'm interrupting you, but just again for our viewers, you talk of the trust. And that's where the ethics come in, right?
Yeah.
And that integrity.
Yes.
You leave SARS because you felt it was a clash of your integrity. Yes. You come here, they hire you because of their trust in you.
Yeah.
And how important that is, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the work.
Sure.
Of course. Yeah.
And I must confess, I think that was a real baptism of fire. Because you're coming in as a CFO of a listed fund. Firstly, you don't know the listed environment. I didn't know about property. I mean, you know property, but you don't really know property until you work property.
Yes.
I was a CA who was been more in an operational role, finding taxes as opposed to worrying about putting financials out like IFRS and all of that. So I didn't know that. So everything was new. Okay. And I still remember I lost a lot of weight in that first year because I was, you work.
So this is what, about 2017?
2017 is my first year.
Okay.
And I learned.
What's the listed company?
The company was called Gemgrow Properties.
Okay.
So they were a subsidiary of the Arrowhead Group, and they had a property portfolio which was office, industrial, and retail porting. So you had 129 properties. So the first, I still remember, in addition to covering all the board committees and worrying about all the regulation stuff. You need to learn the business. At the same time, you got to go, and we had thousands of tenants. We had property managers. So everything was new, but it was brilliant. It was really, I really learned so much, in terms of it. I think that was also my honeymoon period, because I think the property sector started struggling when, the recession market came in, I think in 2018, when property started taking a slump. So it was my first year where at least the numbers were looking good. So investors, whatever we budgeted for, we had delivered. It was okay. But 2018 was, was when we could see this. But I did the budget for 2018. All the funds at that point in time were delivering double-digit growth in terms of their distribution. Now you are going to be the poor guy that's going to go and say your numbers are going back 10%. So, but to be fair, the fund that we had a lot of small to medium-sized properties, which were considered lower quality assets. And with that, unfortunately, if you're renting space at 100 and a square, and now you're about to come into a recession and people want to leave, and they tell you, well, we're willing to pay you 60. And then I had 55% of that portfolio was office. And, the office sector for a while has been really in trouble. So you either take the 60 rand, you lose a tenant and you have no tenant for 6 months, and then you're probably only going to get 60 or 70 when you put that tenant in. So sometimes you take the knock, okay? But of course, it was, I think, one of the worst experiences is going to the market and telling them, my numbers are going back 10%. And they said, like, are you mad? Everyone else is giving things. But also, once again, I literally remember taking the investors through a behind the matchbox calculation. This is a 4 billion and fund, and you're giving them numbers off the shot as to why. And I think they appreciated that, because even though your numbers might go back, it's good to know that they know that there's at least credibility, that the person understands the numbers. He's not just telling us the numbers going back and he can't explain it. So for me, I spent a lot of time, especially when you talk to people, you're not always going to give them the answer that they want to hear.
That's
but
very powerful.
But it's as long as you can ensure that you can explain it to them in the way that they understand it. And I always feel if you can't explain your business to a layperson, then you actually don't know your business. Because
so did you guys, those properties, the ones that were not doing too well, did you get rid of them, or you just negotiated lower rentals? And
so we decided up front, because myself and my CEO at the time.
And you said again, your CEO, or you never said, but I know, your CEO was also not from the property side of things. He's also like a businessman, trader, and came from the diamond business and whatever. Yeah,
he was a diamond.
And you come from a tax perspective. What a nice combination.
So it was but what was nice about that is sometimes when you're in a sector, you know it all. So you don't rethink your business because you know it. Sometimes to get a fresh set of eyes coming from the outside and looking in,
that's powerful. Yeah.
They see something different. And I truly feel that's the value added. So we sat down, just the two of us, and we said, guys, if we're going to keep these properties, it's 10% now. It's going to go back 10% the next year. At that point in time, all the property funds were growing. No one was selling. They all wanted to basically buy. We said, no, we got to sell. So we put up 1 billion rand of that 4 billion rand up for sale. And the thinking was to say, we're going to take the money and we're going to recycle into assets that are better, that are more sustainable. So we were given lemons, and we said, we're going to make lemonade of this thing. So we basically, and I'm not saying a lot of those assets had proven to be strong during a bull market. Unfortunately, when you have a bear market, this is where the risk comes in, and the risk it was knocking. So for us, we felt, let's sell a lot of these assets, and we were ahead of the market in terms of trying to sell a lot. So to give you an example, there was 129 assets. We started this program of selling, and we probably, by the time I got to Arrowhead, where I'll tell you about the Arrowhead journey, we probably sold 100 of those 129.
And this is what, 2018?
This is 2018. So 2018, and 2018 was also a bad year because my dad passed away. So the average listed company puts out results in about 10, 11 weeks. We do it in 8. And in that time, I remember I'm sitting next to his bed at 3 in the morning while he's on his, and I'm like, still have to work because I still got to deliver, you got responsibilities, So it was a tough period personally, but, so we managed to get through 18. Where we put out a decent set of results. We managed to start selling a lot. I still remember sitting with my group CFO at that point in time. you know, he was looking at his cash flow, and I'm sitting with 600 million of spare cash. Now, in a business, you know, profit and turnover is all good. But when times are bad, the things you need is cash flow.
Yes.
If you don't have cash flow, your business is in trouble. And I'll tell you when we get to COVID, because COVID was in...
And I was just about to say, I'm just thinking of the timing. And again, you spoke in the first segment about your intuition. Yeah. I think you need to tap into it even more. Because when you look at it, it's 2018. Did you ever think 2 years later, we'd be in this unprecedented period of COVID? Who would have ever thought? So what wisdom... At the time, I mean, you did what you needed to do because you were looking at the numbers. You didn't know what was happening 2 years' time. And what a stroke of genius when you think of it between you and your partner doing that, because those would have been, and especially in office space, those would have been absolute lemons.
We would have been destroyed.
Yeah. Wow. So, you know, what we've just learned, we've learned so many pearls of wisdom. Honestly, and I mean, you don't know when you do what you need to do.
Yes.
To survive, right? That's what we all do. And in that journey, tapping into your intuition, just knowing what to do at the right time, that integrity Junaid speaks about, that trust capital he speaks about, the fact that you can. I mean, so many of us, we may go to our investors or go back to our shareholders or go to the banks, whoever's funding us, and what would happen is, you want to give them, or you proposing something, and you give them the good story.
Yes.
You were able to give them the real story. Yes. In a market where everyone else was expanding, you were given a reality that you guys were moving in a different direction and you needed to get rid of assets.
Yes.
But that dealing with the truth, I think that's what comes out so strongly. And a great lesson for each one of us. So after the break, we can tap more into the wisdom of Junaid, this young 50-year-old, and we'll let him share a lot more of his insight and leave us with some takeaways in this last segment. See you after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Inspirate Business, the show that's here to inspire, enlighten, and empower you. May your business be most successful, whatever business you're doing. That in itself is such a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He expounds this in the Holy Quran, teaching us to trade and to earn halal rozi. And we picked this up from brother Junaid Limalia, good friend of mine. What a journey he shared with us over the last 3 segments. We already came to our last segment. And, from your days in Durban to SARS, to before that to the UK, and then getting involved, lo and behold, not expecting to do this, but in the listed property sector, and tapping into his intuition, selling off assets where everyone was buying, and wisdom and guidance from Allah. That's what the intuition is, right? And then not knowing at the time that when you were doing all of that, you'd get into what was unprecedented over this last 3-4 years. This COVID pandemic that has really disrupted every facet of our lives. You then, how did you guys, in this last minute, I want to cover on 2 things. We'll talk a little bit on how did you navigate through that period? That would be something quite interesting.
So I think what happened at GemGrow is we decided to merge with a holding company.
Right.
And post the merger, I was appointed to the group CFO role in that company. And that was in 2019. So I did my first results presentation September 19. We did it in November, all hunky-dory, everyone's happy. Share price is sitting at 4 Rand. And then COVID hits us. And March is when, we heard about this disease and we thought, now this is going to be just...
I think people laughed and they said something in December, they heard about something in China.
So anyway, 1st of April, this thing's a reality. So we're billing our April rental, we bill it in March. And then, the president basically announces the lockdown. Now, the biggest challenge you're sitting when you're building rental is you can already see people that can't trade because they have to close their stores. So they're going to find an angle not to pay you the rent, right? And you got to pay the rent. You got to collect the rent. So I think the greatest challenge is building an amount. You know you got all your expenses. You got to pay your staff. You got to pay your property managers. Anyone who knows property knows that an empty building or building that's not used is more risky, which means you need more security, you need more services. So your costs are fixed, but you don't know how much rental you're going to get to be able to pay the bill. And part of being a REIT is we distribute all our cash flow as our earnings. So we don't always have spare cash. So it was a challenging time. But so what we decided, we were selling assets. So the saving grace for us was naturally you're trying to negotiate your rental. And when I was at SARS, one of the things we did was a process called pay now argue. So we should have a dispute with the taxpayer.
Sorry, just repeat that, pay?
It's called pay now argue principle. So what happens is people would have a tax dispute and they'll pull the dispute. And normally the law says you only pay at the end.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if you're a corporate, you can pull it for years without paying anything. The pay now argue legislation came in and said, no, we as SARS at that point could collect a portion of that amount, provided we didn't hurt the business, so we did it responsibly. So I started that process at SARS, at a corporate level where we used to collect part of the bill. When we got into COVID, we now needed to negotiate rental because the opinions came back saying, listen, you're entitled to some rental, but you're not entitled to all of it because you're not giving, the people can't trade. So how can they pay everything? But they're also using your premises to store their stuff. So there had to be a middle ground. So we came up with a principle to say we will help people. We will provide that relief. But we needed information. We wanted to know how's your cash flows. We want to know whether you're paying your own people. So we wanted a fair and equitable thing. So we set up the process. It was very much on the process of the information I used to ask at SARS for give me your financials. Tell me how much you can pay. So
in other words, you don't want to cripple the person because it's a win-win. You want to help, and then let's work through the quagmire, and then eventually we'll come out of it together.
Exactly.
What a powerful principle.
Yes.
I mean, I think more than ever now, even coming out of the pandemic, I mean, there's still blood on the streets, right?
Yes.
A lot of people are taking a lot of strain.
Yes.
Business-wise, maybe in sectors that have changed, so dynamic. And even if you're having problems, let's say with the repayments, from a bank perspective, the same principle can work, where you confront the issues up front, and then you work out solutions that can help both parties.
What you're saying is very powerful. Business is not about winning. If you win, both people must win, and or both people must feel aggrieved that they've given too much.
So it's not about winning at the expense of the other.
100%. You got to come up with a win-win or a lose-lose.
Yeah.
But both people feel like they've either, and I think I always felt the best deal is when both people feel they've left too much on the table for the other person.
That's the best deal, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel good and you feel good.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like I've done my best,
Yes.
So, and I think that's, business is not always about trying to get everything, because I could lose a good tenant who's paid me all his life, but he's going through a tough time, and I could replace it with a tenant that will promise me to pay me well, but doesn't pay me. So
what's the point?
So
Yeah.
you rather work with your tenant that's good, and that's been the philosophy that the entire property sector has taken through this process. Most people, in terms of working with tenants.
So Junaid, what I want to say, you shared a lot of insight. You now. You've taken a bit of a sabbatical.
Yes.
Because you guys were, of course, taken over. So there have been dynamics there. Now you've taken a bit of a sabbatical. And where's the journey to from here? And how do you see coming out of the pandemic, coming out of all this, what you've just been through, a listed property company, with all your experiences with government and the taxes side? I'd also like to understand from you, where do you see South Africa? Where do you see us playing a role? What is the future for our kids?
I think we all sit back and we worry.
Yeah.
We worry because we worry for our children. We worry what future is there in the country, and that's understandable. While stating that, we are here. This is our home. We have to do the best every day. And this is my philosophy. My philosophy is you wake up in the morning and you try to make a contribution in whatever way you can make that contribution. You have to make that contribution, and you got to do. Part of doing that is to try to do for yourself, but also try to make an impact to those around you. Even if it's a small impact, at a community level, these things they all grow. So
I know you do a lot of community work by running every morning.
no, that's more for myself.
Yes.
But, so as far as we were taken over, so I had to give up my position, and to move on. I've had to ask myself, do I want to start up my own business? Which I've been looking at a few options. I haven't really got there.
But you're in the financial world, and the world financial epicenter now is become Dubai, right? So is that not in the, that's the natural question to ask? Is that not in your plans?
I've thought about an opportunity overseas. I'm not saying you're close to it, but I love my home. Whether we like it or we love South Africa. This is our home. We've been born here.
Yes.
And I love my people. I love our people. As much as a lot of people are struggling and a lot of pain out there. By and large, if you've been in the UK, sometimes it's hard to get a smile from someone across the street. Whereas our people, you greet the person, who greet you back.
So that's the beauty of South Africans, isn't it?
That's the beauty of South Africans. We are very resilient.
Race you come from, it's just that's what people see in us. International people see in us, right?
And I notice lots of undercurrents happening, and there's frustrations, and people look and they blame, But by and large, I think we are good people. I think we are resilient people. And I think, we must, if we're going to live here, we must play our part to be a constructive part, to this society and to make a contribution to this society.
Wow. Now you're giving me goosebumps.
No, listen, we've got to make shukr for what we've got in our lives. And my philosophy, rightly or wrongly, is you try to give more than you can take. If you can do that, then hopefully others watching.
That's the prophetic way. That is the prophetic way, Junaid. We've come now to, the fourth segment already and come to the end of the show. This was absolutely humbling for me.
Thank you.
I know you 20 years and I've heard of stuff. Maybe I should listen more, actually. Maybe when we're in other circles, I talk too much. But it was awesome experience in this last hour listening to and sharing insights. I hope you, wherever you are watching, have enjoyed this as much as I have from a friend of mine, but more important, a passionate South African. I think the message at the end was that constructively, let's make an impact where we are and appreciate, make shukr for what we have. And I think if we all have that attitude, importantly also this of ethics. Junaid could have maybe made a lot of money, but then he could have been on the Mail and Guardian, right, as well, or been on the Zondo Commission, right? But his ethics didn't allow him. What a lesson! What a lesson! His ethics didn't allow him to be able to subscribe to stuff that was against his value system, and then ventured into somewhere else, but had that faith and taqwa that Allah will always look after him, and follow that intuition that connects you to how Allah's guidance. On that score, we like to thank our that beautiful couch, Gabba couch, and this beautiful person on that couch from Aza Collective in Crummeville. You can go and check them out, and other beautiful sets that they have. And we wish to have you on many other of our Inspirate Business shows. We're going to be having this once a week and for a long time, inshallah. That's called Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from myself, Yusuf Dinda, and my guest, Junaid Limalia.